Canadians are drowning in debt, and Mark Carney wants to drag us even deeper. In case you've been living under a rock over the last decade, Canada is currently over $1.25 trillion in debt. Frankly, for most of us, that's a hard number to even begin to comprehend. So I'll flash how many zeros that is on the screen. $1 trillion is 1,000 billions, or a million millions. Even saying it out loud doesn't make it easier to grasp. I felt I needed to make this video so that you can all better understand the Conservatives and Liberals' proposed budget before you head to vote on Monday, as the Liberals made their costed platform quite hard to understand. And I spent several hours over the past week developing a deep understanding of both documents and doing quite a bit of math, especially for the Liberals' platform, which was much more confusing and less clear. Mark Carney is promising a record $225 billion in new debt over the next 4 years. That's not just almost double more than what former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised, it's over double what Pierre Poilievre's Conservative platform would add to the debt. And it's Canadians who will be left paying the interest. That's right, under Carney's plan, interest debt charges will increase by more than $5.6 billion over the next 4 years alone. Poilievre's plan would see it fall by over $2.4 billion, creating an $8 billion swing. That's $8 billion that could have gone to healthcare, education, or public safety. Instead, it's being lit on fire to service the debt. So in this video, I'm breaking down the numbers, the promises, and the debt bomb that Carney's hiding in his platform, so that hopefully everyone who watches can get a better grasp of these two platforms and what we're in for post-election. Let's start with a deficit comparison. So to start off, both leaders use the baseline deficits between 2025-26 and 2029-2030, provided by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. These baseline values were reflective of the fall economic statement released in late 2024 by the Liberal government under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You might remember this statement blew past the proposed budget by former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland by over 50%, reaching a $61.9 billion deficit. The numbers were so staggering that Freeland resigned just before the statement came out. But here Carney is saying he's going to make things even worse. And he's doing this while expecting you to vote for him. I mean, can you even believe it? So the baseline deficit provided by the PBO adds up to $141.7 billion between 2025 and 2028. Poilievre's plan would see the deficit fall to $100.6 billion cumulatively over those 4 years. Conversely, Carney's costed plan would see it rise to $224.8 billion in new debt. So Carney's platform adds more than $129 billion in new spending over the next 4 years, largely concentrated in housing, healthcare, infrastructure, and of course, climate initiatives. We all know where Carney stands on the green agenda. This means Poilievre would spend over $40 billion less than the PBO projection, while Carney would exceed it by more than $80 billion. Altogether, Poilievre is aiming to spend $120 billion less than Carney over the 4 years and actually reduce the deficit year over year from the PBO's projections. The federal debt interest charges already cost Canadians $1 billion per week. That's more than Ottawa spends on healthcare payments to the provinces, and I'll remind you, our healthcare system is in shambles. You guys probably don't even believe these calculations because they're so damning, so let's dive into both costed platforms. We'll start with the Liberals' because, quite frankly, they made it so confusing. So the first line in the costed platform from the Liberals is the numbers provided by the PBO that I previously mentioned. The next important line is the total revenue and savings. This is going to go against the deficit because it's a surplus for the government. Then we scroll down to the last line, total new measures, and that's the new spending proposed by Carney. So adding these three values together, you can see in the first year, Carney will have a deficit of $62 billion. In the second year, this will fall to $60 billion, then $55 billion, and $48 billion in the subsequent years. We could go through the costed platform line by line, but we'd probably be here for 10 hours. Anyways, if we add the last line of new spending for the next 4 years, that's a total of around $129 billion in new spending over those 4 years by Carney. But if we add all the total deficits together, that's $225 billion over the next 4 years. I'll remind you, Trudeau only planned on increasing the deficit or debt by $131 billion over those 4 years. So here's Mark Carney trying to present himself as an economic improvement over Trudeau, only to subsequently propose a plan twice as bad. Now let's hop into Poilievre's costed plan, which thankfully was a lot easier to understand. I mean, he made it very simple and stopped us from having to do the math for him. You can see right here, Poilievre's plan shows the baseline deficit from the PBO minus the revenue change and spending reductions, which actually reduce the deficit because he's trying to save Canadians money, followed by his final proposed deficits. While Carney proposed $129 billion in new spending, Poilievre proposed over $41 billion in savings. Compared to Carney's deficit of a cumulative $225 billion, Poilievre's would just be over $100 billion over the 4 years. And remember, we'd actually be paying less interest on the debt, not more, given the reduced deficit and additional savings. So you might be asking yourself, where will Poilievre find the savings? His platform proposes cutting billions of dollars annually from federal consulting fees, slashing total spending by $23.5 billion over 4 years and bringing it back to 2015 levels. He also plans to reduce bureaucracy through attrition. For every 3 bureaucrats who retire, only 2 will be rehired. It's a gradual trim, not a mass layoff. There will be no forced firings. Despite what some on the left have tried to claim, that's straight from the document, it will only be done through retirements. And then there's foreign aid. Poilievre said he'll reduce aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies by about a third. Instead, the focus would shift to domestic priorities. He's also pledging to fully repeal the industrial carbon tax, and every dollar of new spending would be legally required to come with $1.50 in savings. This will be a law that governs government growth. I'll remind you that despite Carney's claim to cancel the carbon tax, this is a lie. He reduced the consumer portion to $0, but a legal carbon pricing law, the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Act, remains on the books and can only be axed through a majority vote in Parliament. That means Carney could similarly re-raise the consumer carbon tax whenever he pleases without parliamentary approval, and Conservatives have suggested that he will do that very thing if he wins the election. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, it was after all Mark Carney himself who wrote in his book Values that politicians who abandon carbon taxes should be held accountable. Mark Carney claims to be the adult in the room, but he's proposing a fiscal plan that's even more reckless than Trudeau's. Remember, Trudeau was supposed to run 3 small deficits and eventually balance the budget magically, because budgets balance themselves, so he thought. But we all know how that turned out, worsening every year. And now Carney, who's supposed to be the serious one, is planning to borrow even more. Carney also copied many of Trudeau's housing policies, pledging to build 500,000 homes annually. But we remember Trudeau made the exact same promises, only to see housing starts decrease year over year. In fact, I plan on making another video about Carney's housing plan as I talk to realtors, mortgage brokers, and investors nationwide who slammed the plan. Long story short, Carney wants to prioritize mobile homes, which he's heavily invested in, by the way. Or should I say Brookfield is, his magical company that he knows nothing about all of a sudden. So if he ever does reach his promise, it will probably be through modular homes, which aren't as good as they seem, especially in Canadian weather. Make sure you subscribe for that upcoming video. Additionally, a recent Leger poll says that 65% of Canadians don't think that Carney will balance the budget. I'm not surprised, given this recent financial pledge. And it gets worse. If you watched my other video, my most recent, the Liberals have explored a home equity tax and also revisit the capital gains tax increase. Because remember, they haven't removed that, they just paused it to get through the election. So those who already own homes might not be safe under a Liberal government either. Conversely, when I asked the Conservative Party where they stood, they told me explicitly that they would repeal the federal reporting requirement on the sale of primary residences implemented by the Liberals in 2016, and that they would never, ever implement any tax on home equity. So Pierre Poilievre is offering a clear, measurable plan. In fact, his platform was reviewed by 2 former senior economists, one from Statistics Canada and one from Finance Canada, and they both found it to be reasonable. He's proposing tax cuts, budget discipline, and a law that forces savings from the government before they're able to spend. That's something no Liberal government has ever tried to do. So the choice really couldn't be more clear on Monday. A fourth Liberal term with Mark Carney, whose plan will add $225 billion in new debt and raise interest costs on your tax dollars, or a Conservative Party that plans to cut the deficit by 70%, rein in bureaucracy, and finally get Canada's finances back on track. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this the kind of fiscal clarity you were looking for? Share this with someone who still thinks the Liberals are the fiscally responsible option. Also, if you haven't voted yet, how much did this fiscal plan weigh on your choice? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more honest breakdowns like this one. I'm Isaac Lamru, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, I just wanted to say thank you and God bless. You have no idea the pleasure it is to me to be able to make these videos, to do my nerdy math, and potentially make a difference in this upcoming election and our country's future. The legacy media won't show you this. I will. Make sure you follow and subscribe for more truths they try to bury.